Hi, welcome. My name is Chase Arnett and I'm the founder of the Hudson Oven, a small cottage industry bakery here in the lower Hudson Valley. Today, I wanted to make some fresh pizza dough with you. We made it nice and easy by pre-blending a nice blend of our New York State freshly milled flour, a 00 flour, and also mixing in the salt and the yeast and some dehydrated sourdough starter. So that way you can basically just focus on mixing and making the dough and not have to worry about finding all the really good freshly milled flours that we have access to as a bakery. In addition to that, I wanted to mix up some fresh made pizza dough and show you how simple that is, but also show you how simple it is to make a nice fresh Margherita pizza in your own home. I'm going to be using a standard tabletop mixer to help along the dough mixing process. You can do it by hand. It's no big deal. It just takes a little while. And what you're going to need for the Margherita is classic toppings like a tomato sauce, which we actually canned 2 years ago, freshly grown San Marzano tomatoes right here in the Hudson Valley, a fresh mozzarella. Of course, these are all these ingredients are up to you where you want to get them and how you want to go about finding them. But we have a fresh made mozzarella, we have some large crystal sea salt, we have a little bit of fresh olive oil, fresh basil. Instead of pecorino romano, I prefer to use something we're all familiar with, which is Parmigiano Reggiano. In addition to that, we're going to need a little bit of warm water. Remember, the warmer everything is as far as the environment you're in and the water you use is going to really help move along the process of dough proofing and fermentation. So we're going to start with warm water that really can, basically, we're going to be able to make dough. We're going to mix it now and it's going to be ready within 3 hours. So that way, if you're in a pinch and you have some people coming over and you want to make some nice flatbreads or pizzas, a bread brick is a really good way to go. You just mix it up, nice warm water and a nice warm environment until it proofs up into nice little dough rounds. One bread brick makes 2 14-ounce pizza doughs. It's going to be able to stretch to around 12 to 14 inches depending on your skill level. All right, I'm going to set these pizza making ingredients to the side just so that way we have room to make our pizza brick. We're first going to focus on the dough, right? So you're going to need a standard size sheet pan. This is actually what you're going to place the dough on once it's already mixed and shapen into its little dough balls, and it's going to rise on this sheet pan. So first we're going to need to measure out our warm water. We're looking for 1.25 cups per brick or 300 grams of water. It's going to be a nice low hydration dough, something that's going to be really easy and nice to work with. So I'm going to actually just do it by weight as a baker, but you can do it using a measuring cup as well if you don't have a scale at home. All right, so I'm going to start by measuring out 600 grams because I plan on using 2 pizza bricks to make 4 pizza doughs. So here we go, measuring up to 600 grams. Now when you're measuring water out, you want to get within 10 grams either direction. So, it could be 610 or 590, up to you. So we're going to pour this into our mixing bowl, all 600 grams of it. And we're going to take our pizza brick out of its packaging. We're going to save the label because it has the directions on it. So we're going to cut our pizza brick open. We're going to hold the top closed and break up that pizza brick inside the bag before we dump it into the bowl. Remember, you want to add the water first, then the flour. Trust me, I learned the hard way. So now that the ingredients have been added in the order of water first, flour second, we're going to throw in our dough mixer, set it on setting 2, lock it up, and let the mixer do its thing for a while using a dough hook. An alternative to using the dough hook is obviously to get a bowl and do it by hand, which is totally fine. That's allowed as well if you don't have a mixer at home. So because it's a drier dough, the mixer is going to have to work away at it for a little while. And even in the end, after we get it out of the mixer bowl, we might even do a little bit of a little touch-up by hand. So we're going to let this mix for the next 3 to 4 minutes. While the dough's mixing, I'm going to take this opportunity to clean up the workspace. So now that the pizza dough has been fully mixed in the mixer, I'm going to separate the dough from its dough hook, remove the bowl, set the mixer aside to clean in a couple of minutes. So we're going to let the mass sit in a dough bowl for the next 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes called an autolyse. Technically this is not one because the yeast is already blended in, but we're going to let it sit and let the ingredients get to know each other. Those particles of flour are going to absorb water over time, kind of like when you mix up a bowl of oatmeal and right at first those grains aren't fully hydrated, but over time it becomes sort of a more mushy mass. What we want is mushy and we want everything to be hydrated in the bowl. Also, that's going to give the yeast some time to develop some gluten structure. structure. So we're going to cover this up and come back in about 10 to 15 minutes. And then all we're going to have to do from there is divide it up into equal parts and shape it into their dough balls, and they're ready to go and proof for the next couple hours. All right, I'll see you in a few minutes. All right, it's been 10 to 15 minutes since we mixed the dough together and let it sit in the bowl. So now we're going to uncover it and divide it into 4 equal dough balls. If you're only using 1 bread brick, that means you're going to be dividing it into 2 equal bread balls. You're going to feel a change or see a change in the texture of the dough since mixing it. So before we divide it, we're just going to give it a couple of quick slap and folds. So the action of this is that you stick it to the table and fold it over. This is just a quick round of gluten development just to give it a little bit of strength before we divide it up. So as you can see, that would be 1 big pizza. So we're going to divide it up into 4 equal parts. Remember, if you're doing 2 or 1 pizza brick, it's only 2 equal parts. I'm just doing this by hand. I'm ripping them all into equal parts, or eyeballing it into equal parts. And this one looks a little bit bigger. We're going to match that there. The reason I'm doing it by hand is because not everybody has dough knives or dough scrapers. So I'm just showing that you can do this without any special tools in the household. So to shape our ball, literally all we're doing is keeping this one surface nice and flat. We're trying not to rip the gluten on the exterior of the dough ball, and we're taking that top surface and we're stretching it down behind and pushing it into the center from the rear. So you do this not too aggressively, just nice and easy. And then I'm holding it in my hands like this with the seam side in between my 2 hands, and I'm just basically zippering it closed or mushing that bottom part closed. So now we have 1 nice dough round. So we're going to go move on to the next dough ball. Do the same thing. You can see the action that I'm using. Not being too aggressive, I just noticed that I was actually going a little bit too far with the stretching on that, and I started to see some tearing going on in the dough ball. That's okay, so we just stop right there once we feel that tension really starting to pull and tug. And we're putting it in our palms like this, sealing the bottom edge, placing it on the table. Nice and easy. All right, so we have 4 equal dough balls now. I'm going to reposition them just because the devil's in the details. And now that we have our 4 equally divided dough balls, we're just going to cover them and put them in a warm environment to proof for the next 2 to 3, 4 hours. That's unrefrigerated. And if you wanted to do this the night before a party or the night before a pizza making day, or even 2 days before the pizza making day, the dough's only going to get better with time. Once you incorporate water and activate those yeast cells, give them time to do what they do. They're going to eat the food sources in the flour that they find and really start to break things down and make a much lighter, airier crust over time. So if you're in a pinch, you can do it, 3 to 4 hours before a party, or if you have time and forethought, you can do it 2 days in advance and refrigerate it and keep it cool, but covered. Obviously, you don't want it to dry out. Refrigerators tend to dry things out if they're uncovered. So a good place to let these rise covered is near a radiator or over one of the floor vents in a household that pushes heat out, or near a fireplace. Just remember that heating elements usually tend to dry things out, so you want to keep a moist towel over the top, or even get a little mister and you can mist the dough while it's rising, or just have a little bowl of water and dab your finger and touch the surface of the dough occasionally as it's proofing. The reason you don't want it to dry out is because this top gluten surface, the integrity of it is very important when you're going to want to mat it down and stretch it into a pizza dough. If there's tears or breaks in the gluten strands from stretching the dough, or too many of them, you're going to get holes in your pizza, and there's nothing worse than a holy pizza. It makes the oven messy, it makes your bake surface messy, and it just isn't a proper pie. So we're focusing on keeping that dough moist through the fermentation process. You can even wet them right up front here, cover them up. I'm going to go put it in a nice warm place for the next 3 hours, and then we're going to stretch a dough and make some pizzas with all these nice ingredients we have here. All right, I'll check back with you in a few hours. All right, here we are about 3.5 hours later, and our pizza doughs are risen, nicely risen. Now, if they're fermented in a cold environment for 2 to 3 days, they'll actually have spread out less laterally and have a more tall structure to them. Also, since the dough is cold, it's easier to pick up and douse in flour. So first we need to prepare our ingredients for making the pizza. I also have the oven set to about 480, 500 degrees, and a cast iron A big cast iron skillet is in the oven preheating. So I'm going to quick whip up some tomato sauce. A very simple recipe. It's just going to be some canned tomatoes, and we're going to hand crush them and add some salt and basil, and it's going to be nice and simple. So, wow, it smells amazing. I'm just going to add a few of these to a bowl. Try to get more solids than liquid. And with those solids, you'll be able to break them up and sort of have a more chunky sauce. This is an extremely simple sauce. It's not cooked. But the idea is to give it that nice, light, acidic flavor. Put in some fresh basil as well. We're gonna rip the basil up into little pieces, and then we're just gonna do the old hand mash. So when I apply this to the pizza, I'm gonna focus on getting the actual large chunks of tomato and avoid using all this watery liquid. Okay, now that I've prepared a nice light tomato sauce, I'm gonna run in and grab that red hot cast iron skillet and bring it out, and we'll get to stretching our first pizza dough. All right, I have our very hot cast iron skillet. You want to be able to feel the heat about 10 inches away from it before you start using it. All right, now we're going to separate one of the pizza doughs from the proofing surface. Throw some flour right on the edge of the dough so I can slide this tool underneath, sort of peeling it away section by section, trying not to disturb its round shape because we're going to try to maintain that through this process. All right, once it's separated, we're going to dunk it right in the big bin of flour. Can't really overdo the flour here. So you can see it's already a nice big dough. You don't have to do much. Now when you think of stretching a pizza dough, don't actually think like stretching from the inside of the dough, right? And we let it sit for 3.5 hours and it developed all this nice carbon dioxide in the center of the pizza dough. We just want to press all of that CO2 into the exterior crust. I don't know about you, but I like a nice puffy crust on it. I like a thin crust that all the ingredients are sitting on, but a nice puffy crust on the exterior or on the perimeter. So I'm literally just working my way around and pressing. There is no actual stretching going on here. I like to pick it up and move it around and get some more flour underneath. The constant lifting motion away from the actual table itself is just to ensure that it doesn't stick and that you don't end up ripping holes in it when you try to transfer it to your baking surface. All right, I'm leaving a nice puffy crust here. Just continuing to press the air out of the actual flat bottom or interior part of this pizza crust. Get a little more flour off to the side. All right, now I'm going to pick it up and very swiftly, while I'm transferring it over to the peel, just stretch it a couple more times in the air, picking it up. This takes practice. It's hard to explain how to do this. And I'm just going to lay it in this red hot pan here. Once it's in the pan, we can start to apply our ingredients. So first we're going to do some sauce, adding about 3 to 4 tablespoons. Now when you're topping a pizza, less is more. I like to basically just focus on doing a few pieces of really high quality ingredients. So once the sauce is applied, we're going to carve out some Parmigiano. So if you put toppings on the edges of the pie, the center tends to just get filled by default, especially if you have a nice big crust that inflates and kind of creates an angle towards the center of that pizza. So knowing that those ingredients will end up in the center, we're going to focus on spreading this cheese out, even sometimes going over top the crust. I mean, I wouldn't complain about having some melted Parmesan on a nice crust. And now we're going to add some of our fresh mozzarella. Just going to tear it away. Okay, now that we have our mozzarella on the surface, this is ready to go into our 480, 500 degree oven. I'll check back with you in about 20-25 minutes and show you the final finished result. All right, so our cast iron pizza made with the Hudson Oven's pizza brick is finished. We're just gonna slice it up. As you can hear, it's definitely cooked all the way through. I think the real key to getting that bottom fully cooked through is to throw it on the burner as a last touch. So once it comes out of the oven, put it on the burner and cook through from the bottom. Now, I think this is definitely going to be way too hot for me to eat, so I'm going to let it cool down for a few minutes and then we'll enjoy. Thanks for watching how to turn a Hudson Oven pizza brick into a nice freshly risen pizza dough that you can enjoy with your family and friends.